Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each of the episodes against each other. And today's episode is Naruto Chunin Exams Arc, episode 22, Chunin Challenge, Rock Lee versus Sasuke. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happens in this episode. So the episode begins with the three heading towards the classroom they're supposed to be heading towards, while Lee leaves the rest of his team to go ahead and challenge Sasuke because he's from a legendary genius clan and he wants to confirm for himself that effort can beat genius. And Naruto, once again being forgotten and left out, decides to challenge Lee and interrupt Lee before he can fight Sasuke, but he ends up being knocked out. Lee and Sasuke then have their fight, with Lee having a faster speed, stronger strike. Sasuke's pretty much not able to do anything. Even after he brings out his Sharingan, he still isn't really able to keep up with Lee, because it is revealed that Lee, of course, is using pure taijutsu, and therefore it's not ninjutsu or genjutsu. And so the Sharingan can't actually do anything against that because it's not a technique that it can copy. And their fight continues until Lee is about to use one of his more ultimate style moves. And that is when Guy Sensei steps in to stop him, sending his summon first, who talks to Lee. And of course, this is when Naruto wakes up and sees Lee talking to a turtle and is completely confused, or rather a tortoise, and is completely confused. But then Guy appears, and of course, the three in Team 7 are completely shocked by his appearance, which is even more intense than Lee's appearance, because Lee is obviously a copy of Guy. And they, of course, share their moment of Lee being scolded. Then they have their reunion with the sunset and the beach wave crashing against rocks in the background as they have their wholesome teacher-student moment. And then Guy decides that Lee, because he broke the rules, has to run 100 laps, but then Naruto points out that there's not enough time. This is when Guy seems to notice them and is like, "Oh, you're Kakashi's students. He is my eternal rival. I've actually won 50 times, and Kakashi's won 49 times, therefore he's stronger than Kakashi." And this, of course, shocks all three of them, who don't want to believe it because, again, Guy is putting them off purely based on looks. And ultimately, Guy decides that Lee can be punished after the tuning exams, and they then head off to rejoin his team, presumably. Meanwhile, Sakura, Sasuke, and Naruto then head off to go towards the room that they need to reach in order to officially enter the Chunin exams. But now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, it is time to rank the episode. First on our mostly objective ranking list, followed by the personal ranking list. So we first start with our multi-arc supporting character development. And that is Guy and Kakashi being revealed to be eternal rivals, and we get our first tally of their current win-losses for their challenges, which is a running thing that occurs throughout the series. And right now the tally is that Guy has 50 wins and 49 losses. That's worth 3 points. Then we have our multi-arc supporting character growth. We have Lee. He obviously introduces his taijutsu. He doesn't yell out the names of his techniques as he's using them, so I went off of the wiki page, and the techniques that he uses are Leaf Gale, Leaf Whirlwind, and then the one that he does actually name in the episode is Shadow of the Dancing Leaf. However, he doesn't get to finish that technique because that is the one that Guy interrupts, as it's his somewhat ultimate technique, or among his more powerful techniques. And that's worth 3 points for his growth, bringing us to 6 so far. Then we have Guy. And he reveals his summon, which is that he can summon tortoises. And the tortoise is Ningame, who is also worth 3 points. Then that brings us up to 9. But one thing that I think is negative messaging or behavior within this episode is the continued looks-based judgment. Like, they assume Guy must be weak because he's in a green jumpsuit with orange leg warmers and has a bowl cut and bushy brows. But I mean, that suit does not leave much to the imagination. He's obviously well built. Lee's already shown that he's incredibly good at taijutsu. That's his teacher, so probably even better. So why they would assume automatically that he is not strong or that he couldn't possibly be stronger than Kakashi, I don't understand it. But basically, they're judging based on looks. Sakura also doesn't even give Lee the time of day or a chance, and actively is cruel to him purely because she doesn't like his appearance. Meanwhile, Sasuke, who is actively cruel to her and doesn't give her the time of day, she's in love with because he's pretty, at least by her standards. So, this continued judgment of people based on their looks, obviously, they did not learn that you don't judge a book by its cover, so I just think that's kind of negative messaging because looks really have very little to do with a person's actual personality or skills, talents, etc. And that doesn't necessarily sit right with me. Another point to note is I didn't give points yet for the development of Lee. Spoiler, we know that he does not have the ability to use nenjutsu and genjutsu, but at this point, he just confirms that the technique he's using is pure taijutsu, and that he is not using ninjutsu or genjutsu at this time, but he doesn't specify that he cannot use it, that is a limitation that he has. And so I'm going to give those points when he actually specifies that he's not capable of using ninjutsu and genjutsu, rather than him just commenting on the fact that he isn't at that point using it. So that's why I didn't give points for that. But either way, considering all of the points, oh, one more honorable mention. Guy does end up hitting Lee when he is scolding him. And normally I would for sure take points for that as negative messaging or behavior. However, I do make allowance for the fact that this is a ninja world and that these are soldiers and that a certain level of violence is to be expected within the ninja world. And so while I would normally take points for it because it suits the world that it's in and is within that range of what would be expected of a ninja in a ninja world where people are seen as weapons and not as people and that. And even though Guy is extremely wholesome, it also looks like Lee does not mind at all that he ended up being hit. In fact, feels like he deserved that. So I didn't take the points for it, but I do want to honorably mention that I normally would if it was like a different universe, and I don't like it, but I didn't take points for it purely because, like I said, a certain level of violence is expected in the ninja world, and the mostly objective ranking is mostly objective because my bias and judgment can still apply, and in this case, it is a judgment being made. So now that I've addressed everything I wanted to address, 7 out of 10 for the mostly objective ranking. And that brings the mostly objective list to in first, identify yourself, powerful new rivals. A new chapter begins, the Chunin exam, and then this episode, Chunin challenge, Rock Lee versus Sasuke. And that brings us to the personal ranking. Now, for me, I think second only to Gaara is Rock Lee and Might Guy. I think they are the second and third best characters in this series. I think that they are wholesome, they are comedic, and I mean, they just bring such joy when they are on screen. The moment, they appear, I feel joy. And that may be a personal thing, but this is the personal list. And I feel joy when they're on screen. It makes me happy. I think that they are amazing characters. They are wholesome. I mean, they made a sunset and crashing waves appear behind them as an illusion just because of how wholesome and wonderful their connection is. And I think it's beautiful. And like I said, it brings me joy. So automatically, I really enjoyed this episode. Also, I do think that Rock Lee is admirable for, putting in the effort. Like even Naruto, when his bandages come off because he was going to do the one technique, um, notes how his hand, the reason he was wearing the bandages was because his hand was all like beaten up because he trains so much and puts in so much effort, and it's very, very admirable. Additionally, he even has that connection to his teacher. He has his own internal rival on his team. I do think knowingly breaking the rules isn't necessarily something that he normally would do. Well, actually, no, that is something that I think he would do, now that I'm thinking about future events as well. So, scratch what I just said. Doesn't apply. Guy, of course, is awesome and honestly most wholesome of all of the Jonin that are in this series. Obviously, he is a ninja, so he probably has killed people. He's a Jonin, so he's obviously very strong. He is a weapon. But the thing is, when you see him, you would not believe for a second that he was capable of killing someone, even though he is. And like I said, pure comedic value, pure joy when they're on screen. Favorite characters. Second and third, obviously Gar is my favorite, and again, I don't have a reason for liking Gar, whereas these two, I do have a reason. They bring joy, they bring comedy, they're just awesome. And that's why I really, really, really loved this episode. Put a smile on my face, enjoyed the entire episode, fully engaged, fully entertained. Even the introduction of the rivalry between Guy and Kakashi, which I know will continue on, and their ongoing tally of the challenges, which we later learn can be somewhat comedic at times. Um, yeah, I don't think there was anything I really disliked about this episode apart from, the looks-based judgments. I mean, Sakura was extremely cruel, and also Guy hitting Lee, which again, like I said, like that doesn't sit right with me personally, but also you have to consider the context and the universe it's in. And in this universe, they are ninja, which are essentially soldiers, and Guy is the trainer of Lee, the teacher of Lee, and Lee has broken his policy, his rules, and he even knows that he did wrong, which is why it doesn't seem to bother Lee that he got hit. So, overall, I gave it a 9 out of 10 because there were a couple flaws, but otherwise, like, I think it was a very strong episode, mostly because it focused on Lee and introduced Guy and Lee, and so that put it in first place. So we have Chunin Challenge, Rock Lee versus Sasuke, followed by A New Chapter Begins, the Chunin exam, and then Identify Yourself, Powerful New Rivals is in third. And that brings us to the series ranking so far. On both lists, we have Prologue Land of Waves arc in first place, and then the Chunin exam arc and the personal arc have aligned score-wise, and for this episode, they are both at 26 out of a possible 480. But with that, we have now rewatched and ranked Naruto Chunin Exams Arc, Episode 22, Chunin Challenge, Rock Lee vs. Sasuke. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.